Well, folks, Florida State football may finally be back. They're one of the most storied programs in college football history, and it seems like it has been such a long time since they were relevant. Just yesterday, Jameis Winston was winning the Heisman, and they were making the college football playoff and winning national titles. Unfortunately, ever since Jimbo Fisher left, things have been quite chaotic in Tallahassee. The Willie Taggart era was a failure, and the Mike Norvell era got off to a very rough start. After having a lot of bad breaks, it looks like a ball has finally bounced Florida State's way, and they had a huge Week 1 victory over LSU. I can't even begin to describe how big of a victory this is for Florida State, as they finally got that signature win, pulled out a close game, and now things are looking pretty good for this season. In today's video, we're going to talk about how Florida State got on the downfall, the Mike Norvell era so far, and why I think the program and the Seminoles could be back quicker than many people think. But before we can get into it, I have a ton of college football videos coming your way this week, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, smash that like button if you want to support my work, let me know a topic I can cover next, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's talk about Florida State football. In 2010, Jimbo Fisher was hired to be the next head coach of Florida State after Bobby Bowden was done. How did the Seminoles do? They went 10-4 in their first year and won the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Things would continue to be on the up for them. They won 9 games in 2011, and then they won 12 games in 2012. They had some good players and some good teams, but the best was still yet to come for Jimbo. But the best was still yet to come for Florida State. In 2013, they were insane. Led by their newfound star quarterback Jameis Winston, the Seminoles not only went 14-0, but Winston won the Heisman, and star players were decorated all over the roster. They were recruiting at a high level, they had just won a national championship, and Jimbo Fisher was now ranked amongst the elite coaches in college football. Going into 2014, expectations were once again through the roof, and for the most part, they would deliver. Yes, they had a ton of close calls. Yes, the team wasn't as good as the year before, but they still managed to win their first 13 games. This would be good enough to get them to the first college football playoff, where as we all know, they get blown out by Oregon. Despite that loss, it was still a very incredible 5-year stretch for Jimbo. He had won 58 games in 5 years, which included 4 10-plus win seasons and a national championship. In 2015, they had brought in Everett Golson from Notre Dame, and him and Sean McGuire would split time at quarterback. Dalvin Cook had an insane season in which he ran for 1,700 yards and 19 touchdowns, and they once again won 10 games. This time they lost in the Peach Bowl. After that terrific 2015 season, Jimbo had passed the quarterback torch to DeAndre Francois. He was a highly recruited Florida high school quarterback, and he took over. He threw for nearly 3,400 yards with 20 touchdowns in the air and 5 touchdowns on the ground. He had that it factor just like Jameis did, and he led them to a 10-3 record and a win in the Orange Bowl. The Seminoles finished the season ranked number 8 in the country, and momentum was on their side. Going into 2017, things were now supposed to be in line for them to get to another college football playoff appearance. They were ranked top 5 going into the season, and they had a pivotal matchup against Alabama in Week 1. How did they do? They got blown out 24-7. No matter what, the Seminoles would have likely lost the game, but there was a moment during this matchup where the downfall of Florida State really began. DeAndre Francois injured his knee, and he was out for the season. The next 2 games were canceled or postponed due to the hurricane, and now true freshman quarterback James Blackman was thrusted into the starting role. He would start the remainder of their games, and after falling to a 3-6 record, he'd win their last 3 games, including a road victory over Florida, to get them to a bowl game where they beat Southern Miss. It was a very disappointing season, but at least they still won a bowl game. After the 2017 campaign, Jimbo Fisher was out of there. He left a complete mess in Tallahassee for the next coach to clean up, and he took the Texas A&M job. Who did they decide to bring in? Well, they got Willie Taggart. Willie Taggart got his start at Western Kentucky, but he really blew up when he was the head coach at USF. He was a guy who had won in the state of Florida, was familiar to most of their fans, and was also a great recruiter. After 1 season at Oregon, he decided to take the head coaching job at Florida State, and many thought this was a genius hire, but it ended up blowing up in their face. They lost their opener to Virginia Tech, and besides a 1-point victory over number 20 Boston College, they didn't do a whole lot, and they went 5-7. Recruiting was starting to go down, the team was getting blown out, and many people were already calling for Taggart's head after year 1. 2019 would not be any better, as the team ended up going 6-7, and they decided to pull the plug on Taggart during the season. Odell Haggins became the interim head coach, and the team went 6-7, where they lost to Arizona State 20-14. The Willie Taggart era had been a disaster, but many people believe he was not given enough time to clean up the mess that Jimbo had made. Who did they bring in next? They grabbed Mike Norvell. Norvell was one of the hottest up-and-coming coaches in the college football world after he started to blow up as the offensive coordinator at Arizona State and really made a name for himself at Memphis. He made the Tigers a perennial top 25 team and a program that contended for conference titles. Norvell was seen as the best hire of the 2020 coaching carousel, so obviously there was hype for him to fix things right away. Unfortunately, it did not go as planned. As led by Jordan Travis at quarterback, the Seminoles only won 3 games and had 6 losses. They finished 13th in the ACC, and many people were not impressed with Norvell's year 1 showing. 2021 expectations were once again up, and if you're catching a trend here, it did not seem that anyone had any patience for this program to get back. They wanted results right away. Once again, they'd have to wait. Second-year offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham did a tremendous job, but the Seminoles ended up going 5-7. They lost a heartbreaker in overtime to Notre Dame in week 1, and then had the worst loss in school history as Jacksonville State beat them at home by way of a Hail Mary. The losing trend would continue as they lose their next 2 games and start out 0-4. Some were wondering if Norvell would be fired mid-season, but luckily, he won 5 of his next 7 games. All of a sudden, that last game against Florida was huge, as the winner of that would go to a bowl game and the loser would go home. Unfortunately, the Gators did just enough to beat the Seminoles, as the Noles lost 24-21 and finished the season with a 5-7 record. Things could have been a whole lot worse if Norvell kept losing, but going into 2022, many were wondering, will Florida State finally put it all together and get back to winning football games? So far, the answer is yes, but let's hold the hype a little bit. This year's roster had a pretty decent amount of experience. Jordan Travis was back for his 100th year as a starting quarterback, and they had a couple of talented running backs. Trayshawn Ward, Oregon transfer Trey Benson, and returning player Lawrence Toafili were 3 pretty hyped up running backs. At receiver, they returned one of their more experienced players in Ontario Wilson, but they also brought in Arizona State transfer Johnny Wilson and Oregon transfer Micah Pittman. Both of those guys were pretty highly recruited out of high school, and so far, they have been pivotal members in this year's team. Alex Atkins is the new offensive coordinator, and both Randy Shannon and Adam Fuller are the defensive coordinators. Both of them have done a great job so far, and this Florida State offense has been solid. In their week 1 victory over Duquesne, Travis threw for over 200 yards. It wasn't a spectacular passing performance, but the more promising trend was that the running game got going. Trayshawn Ward, Trey Benson, and Lawrence Toafili all went for over 100 yards rushing with a touchdown, and this showed that Florida State had a different approach going into this year. How would that translate into Game 2 against LSU? That was what many people were wondering. Many expected LSU to win this game as they had more talent, had a more experienced coach, and didn't have any faith in the Noles. Little did anyone know that Florida State was ready to have their breakthrough game. Jordan Travis threw for 260 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Florida State's offense was pretty good. Ontario Wilson had a career game of 7 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns, and their running back by committee approach did just enough to keep the defense honest. The Florida State defense shut down LSU's running and passing game, and besides a couple of plays from Jaden Daniels, was very dominating. They took a nice lead in the 4th quarter, but to many Florida State fans' horror, they began to blow it. In what is the most pivotal game of the Norvell era, could Florida State hang on, or would they continue their losing ways? This time, they found a way to win. After having a chance to solidify the game, they fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line, giving LSU just over a minute to go and a chance to tie it or win. The defense could not figure it out as Jaden Daniels led the team down the field, and eventually with 1 second to go, connected with Jure Jenkins in the back of the end zone to make it a 24-23 game. At this point, was Brian Kelly going to go for 2, or was he just going to play it safe and play for overtime? He decided to play it safe. Ultimately, this was not the safe option, as earlier in the game, Florida State had blocked an extra point, and this would happen again. In one of the most crazy finishes we've seen in the last few years, Florida State blocked the game-tying extra point and won 24-23. Jarrett Jackson was the man who blocked the extra point, and later on when they put a mic on him, he was consistently talking about how hard this team worked and how they knew this was going to happen. It seems as if players have been putting so much work in behind the scenes, but they have just not been able to have a ball bounce their way. Finally, last night it happened as Florida State won 24-23 and is now 2-0. There's a chance they're going to be ranked this upcoming weekend, but they probably won't happen because there aren't many slots available. Florida State was not perfect, but it looks like they have an experienced quarterback, a couple of good running backs, and more importantly, a team that wants to win and is sick of losing. I think we could see an 8+ win campaign, and that'd be enough to buy Mike Norvell more time, give the Florida State fans hope, and signal to college football that Florida State is on their way back. But what do you guys think? Am I overreacting to Florida State's Week 1 victory? Are the Seminoles legit? And what do you expect for the program moving forward? If you're a Florida State fan, be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. If you're a fan of another school, let me know your thoughts and give me a topic to cover next. And if you want to support my work here, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.